Welcome to Yell, Fight, Sooie, college football from three friendly-ish rivals.
Okay, you want to do the 2 disclaimers?
On Yell, Fight, Sooie, we have our local, our resident Razorback, Scotty Mack. We've got our favorite Aggie on the planet, Andy.
I'm in Seattle, so I'm not sure I'm on the planet.
Fair. And because Texas lost and we're beaten off this weekend, I'm representing the Transylvania University out of Transylvania, Kentucky. So, yeah, having a good time. So let's jump right into it because we actually do have some fun stuff to get to this episode. First of all, Texas, we will not discuss Oklahoma State except for to say my worst thing that I could have happened in the sense of I told you guys this would finally be a measuring stick for me, and the measuring stick meant we came up short. No other way to surround it. Andy, you were off. Oh, no, never mind. Sorry,
No,
Scott was off.
But our offensive line certainly was.
Okay, so Andy, talk to me about last week.
Have you ever? I don't even know what I had a joke, and it's not even worth it. We spotted South Carolina 17 points and lost by 4. It really is. I'm sorry, and that 17 points was in the first 5 minutes of the game. Did I mention that?
No.
So yeah,
7 of those was in the first 10 seconds of the game.
Yeah, they returned the opening kickoff 100 yards for a touchdown. We then threw an interception, touchdown. We then fumbled the ball, field goal. Those were our first 3 possessions, and their first offensive possession was that kickoff return. It was horrible. Our offensive line is a cluster of shambles. There are some reasons for that we can discuss because it's going to affect the rest of the season. And there's just been a whole bunch of just horrible stuff coming out of the locker room since then, as you might imagine. So it has been a really good week to be an Astros fan.
Well, here is something, Scott, and we're going to skip you for a second because you were the one who beat off last weekend. Andy, I'm going to say something I've never said in my whole life. Let's stay in College Station for a minute. It seems like there's a whole lot going on. You've got players getting suspended. There's a rumor that Billy Lucci lost his press creds. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yeah, that's not real.
Not real. Okay, good. Because it seems like for as much as I don't really like Jeff Ketchum or Billy Lucci, it does seem like hiding from the press is a thing. Real quick, catch us up. What's happening and why?
I mean, a part of the issue is that nobody really knows what's happening. The suspensions, as I've been able to figure out and read different things online, there were at least two kids, maybe 3, maybe 4, but only 3 have been named, who have been suspended indefinitely for vaping THC in the locker room post-game after the loss. And they got caught, and they were indefinitely booted. And so one of the interesting things, because this is part of Jimbo's reputation as a coach, thanks mainly to Crab Legs in Florida State, Publix is a wonderful shopping establishment, by the way, it doesn't have any discipline on his team. So you can't have it both ways. You either aren't a disciplinarian or you do suspend guys for smoking weed in the locker room. That's the route we've taken. I think that's the absolute right route.
Absolutely.
But you also have a bunch of kids when you recruit at a very high level who are used to losing 1 or 2 games over several years. And we've shown them this year losses to Appalachian State, Mississippi State, South Carolina, might as well be state, and Alabama. Only one of those is okay. And so you've got a lot of disgruntled kids. I think it's nearly as bad as the internet wants you to believe. Are we going to lose some kids to transfers? Yes. Are 3 of our schools going to lose some kids to transfers at the end of the year? 100%, because that's what college football is now. But I think Jimbo had to put his foot down this week. He had to make people understand that there has to be consequences for your actions. And if there are players that don't like it, I'm actually encouraged that we do believe that there's no player bigger than the program. Now, all of that doesn't help with the fact that we are also 3-4 right now and have to somehow find 3 more wins to get bowl eligibility in a season where we should have been knocking on the door for the playoffs. That was the expectation for most of the fan base. And so the disgruntlement, the fire Jimbo, the people talking about his buyout, that is all a function of all the hype that happened preseason versus the reality of today.
Okay.
Was that enough for you?
Correct.
But
no,
this
nail on
is
the
how
head.
stupid the internet- This is how stupid the internet got with all that. There have been rumors of fistfights between Billy Lucci, who runs TexAgs.com, and Jimbo Fisher on the field. There have been rumors that Jimbo Fisher punched those kids that were vaping in the locker room. There have been rumors that those kids were fighting in the locker room with equipment guys trying to steal stuff. None of that's true. But because the internet doesn't work like it's supposed to, or maybe it does, I can say, literally anybody can say anything and somebody else is going to run with it, and it becomes part of the narrative. And it's just everything that could go wrong from a football perspective has gone wrong, up to and including hiring an OL coach who has been, and I don't know how much of this is a secret or how much I've heard from a few different sources, that Adazio, who was our OL coach we hired for this year, has been in and out of the hospital for most of the season. So you've got a new OL coach. You have OL issues. Those that up to me, you have a bunch of young players. So there is no system in place that anybody's been able to reinforce. I understand all that. It's a crap situation, but it is what it is. But throw on top of that social media deciding that they're going to just start making up wild bullshit about a football program, and it's become a firestorm. And it's gotten, frankly, pretty ugly this week.
Scott, why don't you weigh in on it? Sort of, I mean, just your thoughts on it, because I want to come back to it. It's going to be one of the big topics of today's episode. But just from even further away than I am, what is your take on the situation?
So two things. I do want to point out that now indirectly Arkansas has beaten A&M this year because we beat South Carolina and they beat you. So we're going to count last week as an indirect.
But we beat A&M too, because we only lost by Alabama by 2. So
that is correct. By 1. Yeah. So that is correct. I will also say this. Having a lot of experience with the Arkansas program through the Houston Nutt era. First of all, through Jack Crow. You have to go way back in Arkansas. Jack Crow was fired on the field after he lost to Citadel. Houston Nutt had planes flying overhead that people were renting so they could say, fire Houston Nutt. All of these things, we went through John L. Smith saying, smile to the fans. It's going to be okay. Smile. We're here to represent the great state of Alabama. That is what the man said for the Arkansas team. And we went through Chad Morris. All of these things equate to a dumpster fire, which A&M is about a week away from having if you don't win this week. Like Andy's talking about, perception becomes reality. And the media gets stuff out there, and they start saying how bad things are, and people start piling onto that. Now, from afar inside the conference, it's sort of like snicker. A&M's having it rough. Good, because it's hard enough to win in the West. So good. Somebody else is having it bad. Because as an Arkansas fan, we've been through plenty of bad. But you've really, I mean, the A&M's next couple of weeks, bowl eligibility, if A&M does not get bowl eligible at the end of this year, that is going to carry over into the recruiting trail. That's going to carry over to the transfer portal. Not only people leaving, but other guys not wanting to come. So there's a lot of setback that could be happening if A&M does not right the ship. And I'll be honest, from afar, from looking at it from where I'm at, I'm not so sure Jimbo Fisher and all that money's the guy to get you across the finish line. Just saying that.
Andy,
I'm
going to stop that, let you reply to that, because that's been the discussion. I didn't know who Paul Feinbaum was until this week, and that's what I saw him saying. I have 2 questions. One, Andy, respond to that, but also 2, the Billy Lucci rumor, like, where does that come from, and what's the end goal there? And I don't know, I'm asking you to get in the mind of a troll, basically, but those 2 topics.
So first question, Scott's coming first. I think it's A&M's turn, for lack of a better term, because in the SEC, there is going to be a team every year that stuff like this happens to. You could look at Auburn and see, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Auburn has it bad every couple of years.
We're definitely coming to Auburn.
Arkansas has had a rough time with certain coaches. I don't think the problem is Jimbo Fisher, but I also don't know if he's the solution, if that makes any sense.
That is exactly what I'm saying, my friend. That's exactly
but he has so much money on the hook that he's going to get at least 2 more years before anything's going to happen to him. Does it affect recruiting? Maybe. In the world of NIL, I don't know if anybody really knows that.
I question the recruiting impact because Texas has gone through this and it actually hasn't hurt the recruiting one iota. Like, not that dramatic, but we've had a bunch of coaching changes.
But to be fair, I mean, if we become the program that people accuse us of being, we can go buy another top 5 class. That's not that hard to do. You just have to come up with the money. And from what I saw, Shell Oil made $9.6 billion last quarter. A&M alumni have some money to spend. So we could fix that part of the problem. The issue right now, if you're talking about Jimbo Fisher being, is he somebody who's going to take us across the goal line? You got to come up with $86 million to buy him out. And we just talked last week about Oklahoma not being able to afford 80 to move an entire program to a football conference. This is 86 to 1 guy. I don't see that happening for 2 more seasons.
But can I ask something, Andy? In all seriousness, if the alumni have all this money to spend, but they're not committed to the fact that Jimbo Fisher is the guy, do they spend that money now or do they just sit on it? Because to your point, that's what I was also thinking. The Oklahoma buyout's around $80 million to get out of the Big 12, and Jimbo Fisher's worth the same. So Jimbo Fisher is basically worth as much as getting out of the Big 12. But if he's not the guy to fix it, I'm not wanting to invest that type of money. I'd rather pay him and get him on the road and find somebody else. But I'm with you. I think he gets more time. But do they invest that money? Because historically, when it does hurt recruiting, is while that same coach is there, unless he rights the ship. If he doesn't right the ship, it just keeps going bad until you get a change at the top.
So I think here's what happens. We have not been through the normal cycle of a coach. Okay, you're now on the hot seat, fire your coordinators. That's first. That hasn't happened. We've replaced a defensive coordinator because he went and became the head coach at Duke, but that's a little bit different situation. DJ Durkin's a fully capable, no matter what our fan base thinks of him running 3-man front sometimes. He's a fully qualified defensive coordinator. Our offensive coordinator is more of the issue. His name is also Jimbo Fisher, although somebody else has that title. I think the gap that I don't know and nobody on this call knows is the internet fan base is somewhat over Jimbo Fisher and asking the questions you're asking. And so Paul Feinbaum is feeding onto that because he is a professional troll, if you didn't know. And some of the other guys are running with the story because right, wrong, or indifferent, if you put Texas A&M in an article in the last 2 years, you're going to get a lot of clicks. And we are a very reactionary fan base. So if we're going to read something negative about ourselves, we're going to start screaming, making noise, and that drives up rating and ad revenue and all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm not saying that to say I'm self-important, but it's just the reality of what the situation is. Scott, to your question, I don't know where the big money donors are in their support of Jimbo or not right now. I would like to think that guys who have made that much money, hopefully legally, who knows, have enough sense and have enough pragmatism to see the situation for what it is and sure be wary, but is this an aberration? Is this a hiccup, or is this a long-term issue? Now, the change that I'm going to get made and the thing is going to get handed down from some of those big money donors is that there will be a change at offensive coordinator next year, and it will be somebody else besides Jimbo Fisher. He's going to move into more of a head coaching role because one of the complaints has been he's so focused on the offense, he's not seeing the full picture.
Scott, last thing on this, and I'm going to let you answer it. I think Andy's exactly right in the sense that the stages of firing a coach for on-field performance begin with mandatory firing of assistant coaches and then finally you. However, when you're thinking about discipline, losing the locker room situations that maybe are happening, does that speed that up?
It should. I mean, if that's a question to me, then yeah, that should, if it's realistic. If it's 3 freshmen smoking pot, that's not big. That's not a big deal. If you're 7-0 at this point, that's no story whatsoever, right? That gets swept under the rug that these guys get suspended. When you're 3-4 and an angry fan base, 3 18-year-olds' behavior suddenly becomes a whole lot more important. But yeah, if you're losing the locker room with the discipline, that has to happen. All of this guys, I hate to tell you this, but go back and research Arkansas Razorbacks, Houston Nutt, Gus Malzahn, and Frank Broyles from 2006 and 2007, and you're about in the exact same spot we were then. Houston Nutt left in 2008. So just saying.
I'll let Andy respond before we change topics.
And if Mike Price hadn't screamed roll tide in the strip club, we'd be having the same talk about Alabama. It happens at every program. It's ugly when it happens at yours. It's funny when it happens at somebody else's. That's the reality of it. But I don't know yet if this is we need to write it off and start over, or if this is salvageable. And I don't think anybody really knows. I would like to think that my school has a little bit more patience for the number of variables that are happening. They may not, but he's not going anywhere this year, and he's not going anywhere next year. He will be told, it will be strongly suggested, that he hires an offensive coordinator who runs an offense that looks more spread, frankly, that's going to be more attractive to kids. And then he can focus on the big picture. That's the change that's going to be made for the next 12 months. Beyond that, it's kind of up to him. We have enough talent to turn this around quickly. And I've got to think that even if you did part ways with Jimbo Fisher, you've got enough talent on the roster and the situation's good enough that somebody else could walk in and look really good really quickly.
Especially somebody young with a ton of energy that comes in and produces that energy. And I also want to say, I'm glad to hear that it's not only my fan base that's bitching and moaning about a 3-man front, but what they don't understand is if you put 4, if you rush 5, if you only have 6 in coverage, you get eaten up, especially against an RPO that's well executed, especially by a master like
those are a lot of numbers and letters.
Spencer Rattler. Rattler.
Number a lot. That's a lot of numbers and letters. Andy, real quick, one word answer, and then we're moving on. A&M has 5 games left. 2 of them are ranked. Is A&M going bowling this year?
I hate doing this game because there's a number of games we should win. I know you had one word answer. We will beat UMass. We will probably beat Auburn because Auburn's maybe worse than us right now. So we've got to find one more win out of Ole Miss, LSU, somebody else, whoever that is. I think yes, but by the skin of our teeth.
Okay.
The good news is 4 of the last 5 are at home, so that helps.
Yeah. All right, Scott, let's move on to the next topic. We'll start with you. So Brian Harsin, the aforementioned coach of Auburn, isn't letting people redshirt, is the rumor coming out of there that his thought being it's the way to at least get something out of the players you've recruited before they can just jump in the transfer portal. I actually think Brian Harsin's a good coach. He coached here at Texas for a little bit, maybe not fit for a head job there. Overall, what are your thoughts on that strategy and just what's going on in Auburn in the first place?
It's a strategy of a desperate man who's losing his program at the end of the year. When Brian Harsin took over for Gus Malzahn, it didn't look like a great fit from the outside. Although, to your point, Harsin's been a really good coach in the past. At Arkansas State, at Boise State, he did great things. So he's a good coach. He has talent, but the fit at Auburn did not seem like a good fit. And right now, it looks terrible. And for people that don't know, the Auburn booster organization is like a huge deal. I mean, you can go back to some allegations with Cam Newton being paid and all that with those guys, but there's some serious money that's floating around the Auburn football program. And when those guys are not happy, they expect changes like that. Gus Malzahn, who almost won a national championship, beat Alabama on a last-second 109-yard kick return, and generally gave Nick Saban fits, was fired for a lot less than this, and because they were looking for more immediate success. This ain't immediate success, and if you're not going to redshirt players, then other players who are thinking about your program are like, why do I want to go? It's either I'm either going to get a ton of playing time, or I'm going to lose a year. There's nothing really in between. Or I could go to another school that gives me a third option. I mean, it just seems to me like Brian Harsin is taking a bad situation, making it worse, shooting himself in his foot. And I pray to God it carries over to the football field this Saturday.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. Andy, I think Scott nailed on the head. It does reek of desperation. It also reeks, I think, of this bigger problem, like the concept of I think a college coach needs 5 or 6 years to actually be able to turn a program around. Your thoughts on just what's going on in Auburn and the whole red shirt deal?
I think it's hard to isolate what Brian Herson is doing right now without, to Scott's point, understanding who Auburn is. To put it in a vernacular, since you don't have the same exposure that Scott and I do being in the Big 12, Auburn is to Alabama what Texas believes A&M is to Texas, and that we do reactionary things based on Texas's success or lack of success. That if Texas is winning, we've got to play keep up. Auburn's boosters really, really, really live that. And there's some points where I wish A&M was, our boosters were more like that. But this is what you get. Gus Malzahn, to Scott's point, was a perfectly capable coach whose recruiting suffered a little bit, but I don't know how much that suffered because the Auburn boosters basically said, we're not helping you anymore. And so Harson's in a worse situation because it wasn't a united front of the boosters that got him hired. And so the second he got the job, you had other guys saying, this isn't the guy we wanted, and so we're going to do what we can to undermine him. You add to that Alabama is constantly competing for, if not winning, national championships, and the Auburn booster is the most impatient team in the world, although many other college football programs would love to have Auburn's success over the last 25 years. Would love it, but they don't see that. What they see is Alabama is claiming 972 national champions, and we only get to count 3. And it's really a really hard job. And I think every head college football coach job is hard, but I think Auburn is especially hard, especially right now.
And they're looking for an AD too, I believe. The AD that hired Brian Harsin is no longer there. So when you don't have that support, and you're losing the boosters too. I mean, we know how this story ends, guys.
Yeah, you're losing the boosters. You're running off. You're going to be running off kids now. It does not end well for Brian.
And Harsin has no roots. He has no real ties to that area other than coaching Arkansas State for 1 year.
He'll go back to Boise.
He's got to go west. He'll
go west, young man. All right. Before we have a little fun, we have both of you guys have games this week. We'll begin with Arkansas taking on the aforementioned Auburn Tigers that somehow they say War Eagle. I don't understand. Guess I don't get it, but
it's their rally cry. It's kind of like their Texas fight, but they say War Eagle.
One of them makes sense. The other one is War Eagle. Okay,
one of
so
Alabama.
Okay. So Scott, I mean, look, Arkansas been a bit of a mixed bag this season, but this should be a get you or keep you on the right track kind of win, right?
Man, let me tell you, weird things happen in Auburn when Arkansas goes to Auburn. Officials lose time on a clock or add time on a clock. Penalties that are totally reviewable aren't reviewed, or they get reviewed, and then you're like, wait a minute, how did a fumble suddenly turn into a first down for the other team? When they fumbled, we recovered, but you said instead he was in the grasp, and then you add yardage. And if you think that's a lie, I was sitting in a hotel bar with a couple of friends named Cedric and Hoyt, friends of yours too, Jim, 2 years ago. And one of them, who's very knowledgeable about football and one who's not, both looked at me and said, wow, you guys got screwed. How can you sit there with a stone look on your face? Because I'm used to this. This is what happened when Arkansas goes to Auburn.
And for backdrop, our friend Hoyt actually was a scholarship football player at Princeton before becoming the first male model and then becoming part of a cult before he became our friend.
And then there we go. We're boosting his upcoming Netflix doc, right? There we go.
Yeah.
Weird things happen for Arkansas down there. Look, Arkansas needed the week off to get healthy. We had 6 D-backs that were injured. Those guys are coming back. They're getting a little bit more healthy. The offense needed some time to click together, although the receivers and our quarterback, KJ Jefferson, really look like they're on the same page. I expect a win, but I do not expect a cakewalk. Any Arkansas fan that expects a cakewalk when we go to Auburn is delusional. So I am preparing to lose all fingernails by the time 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock is around on Saturday afternoon.
Well, speaking of now, I just want cake. All right, Andy, you've got 2 top 25 teams left on your schedule. the first one rolls in. The I think somewhat surprising Ole Miss. What's your gut feeling on that? I actually, spoiler alert, I saw your Twitter response, so I think I know your gut feeling. But where are you at?
I think it says everything you need to know about Ole Miss, that they are 15th ranked in the country, but they're only favored by 2 over a really bad A&M team right now. So yeah, home field come play because they are coming to Kyle Field, but truthfully, Ole Miss's schedule may be one of the easiest schedules they've had in a really long time. In their first real test last week, they made LSU look competent, which there's been some questions about LSU this year too, and what Coach Foghorn was able to do with the Bayou Bengal Tigers. So you don't know. Here's what Ole Miss is going to be able to do. They're going to be able to run the ball. We're not really good at stopping the run. Jackson Dart doesn't worry me, and I think we're going to try to load up the box and stop the run and try to make Jackson Dart beat us. And I think that plays into making it a closer game. We have not played a home game since the last week of September. The SEC schedule maker and the stupid neutral site game in Dallas does not do us any favors in that regard during the year when we're supposed to be the home team with the Southwest Classic. So our team's hurting. Our team's sad. There's a lot of controversy about it. And
they're feeling good because they got weed in College Station. So
yeah, but those 3 guys aren't on the team right now.
puff fast, motherfucker. I mean,
well, and I was looking up some of the names, and this is how stupid some of the rumors have gotten. One of the guys that has been named in some of the tweets about this is Donnell Harris. Donnell Harris medically retired 2 years ago from our team. He's not in College Station anymore, but supposedly he was suspended for smoking weed in a locker room. That's how stupid these rumors have gotten. We've just picked players that randomly are hanging around different states to be suspended. I don't know. They desperately need a win. Ole Miss is next up, so I hope that they can put it together. And frankly, it could happen. It wouldn't surprise me either way. But unless our offensive line starts playing really, really well, really, really quickly, I think it's another long night, maybe closer than it's been on the road. But nothing's making me feel really good about it.
Okay, well, we'll definitely see. And like I said, Texas is off. Now, one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about on this show, because we're going to have to pivot. Football season will be over before we know it. The cool thing is we all come from or root for schools that have a really big, diverse athletic. Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to insult you. Andy and I have an academic background, not so much there.
Hey, for the state of Arkansas, the University of Arkansas is
chef's kiss. But no, I wanted to talk about some of the other sports that you guys wish maybe fans knew more about outside of the kind of big 3, a really big 4 if we count women's basketball, but just some of the other sports that we think maybe deserves a little bit of the spotlight at a national level. And we'll begin with Scott and your Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah, from a women's side, I mean, our softball team is now top 10. We had a miserable run in the NCAA tournament last year, but by and large, the women's softball team that was the absolute basement of the SEC has turned around, and they're quite phenomenal. They are a juggernaut, if you will, and they're in a prime position there to move forward. But the other sport that they had a lot of investment in a golf course there in Fayetteville called the Blessings. It is a nationally renowned golf course. There are tournaments there. They will show some coverage on the Golf Channel once a year or something like that of a tournament from the Blessings. And it is a huge draw for college golfers to want to come to Arkansas. Coach Brad McMakin's been up there for, 15, 20 years. And the Arkansas golf program is really good year in, year out. And so if I would tell a fan, hey, watch this program, I would say women's softball. Absolutely. But if you want to watch something for fun and then kind of tie names that are on the PGA Tour and the lower tours back to their colleges, Arkansas's actually had we've had more successful golfers than just John Daly, regardless of what people think. I'll put it that way. So that's what I would what I'd point to.
Yeah, and one of the things I was actually going to talk to you about offline is the local sports talk show here is doing basically profiling all the golf courses in town, both sort of resort, private, public, and like municipal ones. So I was listening yesterday as they talked about the UT Club and what all that's offering to do.
I've I've heard great things about that course, and I would be remiss, Jim, if I also didn't throw in the Arkansas Razorback club hockey team. It's not an official team associated with the school, but at their level, which is Division III, because hockey works in reverse. Baseball has the big teams down south, and the not so well-known teams up north flip that for hockey. The club team from Arkansas was national runner-up last year, top 4 the year before that, and undefeated this year, or maybe one loss this year. But I would be remiss if I didn't throw in the Arkansas Razorback club hockey team.
Okay. Andy, what about you?
One NCAA team and then one club team. Women's soccer. Women's soccer has been in existence at Texas A&M since 1993. So we've completed 29 seasons of play. In that 29 seasons of play, A&M has finished first or second in the conference 20 of those years. 10 top 10 finishes in that same time frame, and 13 All-Americans in a sport that isn't really recognized in the state of Texas at that level.
Right.
I mean, seriously, you talk about North Carolina being a perennial power in women's soccer. There's California clubs that have good programs. Texas A&M flies right under the radar, and they've been extremely productive, have not taken that final step to win a national championship, but have come tantalizingly close. I think they're in a little bit of a rebuilding period right now, but it's a super fun time to go to those games, watch the ladies compete at a really, really high level, and they're a program you can really feel good about getting behind. The other one, and I know what here, is the women's equestrian team. They have won 2 national championships since 2000, one in 2002, and I think one in 2012. And I was looking at other stats because stats are fun.
I would not to use numbers and letters, or I got in trouble.
Yeah, the equestrian team's also finished second overall in 4 of the last 6 seasons, and the Western team has won 6 NCEA titles. So it's a really, really strong program that the school's really proud of. So that's kind of where we are. I did realize that Texas A&M has a club hockey team too, and I don't know how good we are or bad we are. I do know that we beat Texas last year.
Oh, we have a club hockey team.
There you go.
It's so I'm going to mention a club team and point out the fact that I think Texas has the record for most national championships in Quidditch.
Yep.
No, but for real, I think the most dominant program on campus for us is our swimming and diving team. They have, it's unreal what they're able to do at all levels. I also wanted to mention women's volleyball, not just because Texas is good, but if you've ever watched a volleyball game on TV, how that is not broadcast more. It is a made for TV sport if ever there was one. The court is small. You can see all of it. The ball moves at a speed. And to me, it's as enthralling as anything else on TV. And so, I think we should definitely, hopefully, we'll start to see more women's volleyball broadcasts as these networks start looking for more and more content to actually get to charge advertising for. That is the end of this week's Yell Fight Sooie. As we've said, I'll be beating off, and we're going to say adieu, which is French for goodbye, Scott, to our favorite Razorback.
At you, God bless you. I don't know. Okay, whatever.
And we'll say au revoir to our favorite Aggie, Andy Tom Chesson.
I would love to eat some French cheese because that would be more enjoyable than watching what's going to happen at Kyle Field this weekend. But thank God the Astros exist.
Thank God the Astros exist. We will be back next week as all 3 of our teams will be back in action. Okay.